What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. Magnum West here, and today it's gonna kind of be a different video. A video that I've shot about like 5 times now, and I shot it previously successfully. It's something I felt like I should post, or I could post, like something of good quality. But I recently changed the setup, and I wanted to, go ahead and record a new video on the new setup. So I'm kind of re-recording. But essentially, I want to introduce a new series as I've mentioned it before, but kind of the main series I have on here is reviews and then also kind of discussions talking about new figure news and new releases, kind of bringing it to your guys' attention and stuff. And then the occasional, comparison and stuff like that. But I feel like one of the things that is pretty, there's some good videos out there, definitely, but I feel like it's kind of different, right? And I think one of my biggest inspirations is going to be the plastic parties that The Amazing does, where basically he goes on there and he, poses action figures. And for me personally, as a photographer and also as a videographer and all that stuff, that's very important for me to see how other people's methods work, because at the end of the day, when people make videos like that, it kind of explains their theory and the way they think about things, and it helps you almost compartmentalize a lot of the stuff that goes into this, like taking videos and taking photos and stuff. So I'm not trying to trivialize it or anything, but this video is gonna be to help you with your posing, kind of give you some ideas, explaining to you some of my methods on how I pose. And yeah, I mean, overall, it's honestly just about having fun. I feel like I haven't done a video like this in a while, or ever really. So I'm gonna try it out, see how this does, and then we'll go from there. But without further ado, let's jump into it. Okay, so you guys can just kind of understand why I have these figures on here real quick before we jump into the posing aspect. Here I just wanted to bring in 1/18 scale, like a small figure. Some people seem to think that Joy Toy isn't really posable. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and dispute that here. And then these three are kind of what I would consider escalation of posability and quality. I would say that Marvel Legends, McFarlane, I didn't want to, I kind of wanted them to be the same size around, so that's why I'm choosing a Marvel Legend. McFarlane center run tall, but they're pretty much interchangeable with the articulation and quality. Um, we have like the domestic slash cheap. I wouldn't say cheap. I would say like the lower end of the totem pole figures right here. This is the Unlimited Spider-Man that's on the Sunfire body, if I'm not mistaken. Go ahead and correct me if I'm wrong on that. So simple, basic, afford, like cheap. It is cheap in quality, like that. That's a fact. It's not really an opinion, and it still looks good, but can't really deny that. And then we have kind of something in the middle. We have the goddamn, I'm over here dropping all this stuff. Um, we have the general release of the Lowest Born Saiyan, which is kind of the middle of the run, right? Of like kind of all action figure brands is SH Figuarts with their Dragon Ball line. Some of them are really, really high quality. Some of them, like this, are kind of better than their domestic, competitors, but definitely not as good as something like a Mayfex or Yamaguchi. And then here at the end, we have the Unk Val Eliminator from Sexy Eyes 2019, which I recently reviewed. If you haven't watched that, go check it out. And then this is kind of like the final boss of action figures, right? I would say like this specifically is the best. I'm willing to wager. I've talked about it in my review of these guys, and I'm not gonna go over it again. I think this is like the best action figure I have in my collection. So yeah, that's kind of the escalation of scale. But let's go ahead and start with the Marvel Legends, and kind of the main focal point, probably the title of this video. Not sure exactly what I'm gonna go with for the titles, but it's gonna be fighting poses. And the main reason why I want to go over fighting poses specifically is because I think they're one of the most creative things you can do as far as toy photography. And for me personally, they're my favorite thing to do. Like, I love a good, statuesque pose, or, kind of stoic pose where they're just standing there, especially for those figures that look really, really good just standing there. I love those kinds of poses, but there's nothing like getting a really nice fighting pose or, battle ready stance, what have you. Here we have kind of a basic, like, you can pretty much use this with any character, really across the board. Um, it's kind of like, getting ready to fight pose, but in comparison, let's go ahead and make this a Marvel vs. Capcom video. Let's go ahead and use Ryu over here. One of the most important things when you're making like a standoff is the position, right? So if this guy is facing this direction, right, his body's open towards this way, you kind of want to make the opposite. So in this case, he's facing the same way, right? So a good way to do it is they have to be facing the same way. You can pose it pretty similar just to kind of get, the overall vibe of it. And then I pardon the position of the camera, but I can't just be moving it around and stuff. So try to make it work as best I can here. But as you can see, you have like a little standoff pose right here. Could be the first pose, the first, picture of your post on Instagram or Facebook or whatever it is you use, Twitter. But yeah, as you can see, not the best, but you can kind of work with it. Looks pretty good. And then obviously have his head pointed in the direction of the enemy combatant. Boom. So that's kind of a ready pose. And then kind of moving on, right? I'm not going to go ahead and switch. One of the things of why I'm using different figures is obviously it's not going to look as good on something that doesn't have the best range of movement. And again, I think I don't know if I've ever mentioned this before, but essentially range of movement is, in my opinion, the defining factor between a really good figure, like high quality, and something like a Marvel Legends. Although Marvel Legends has those points of articulation, they're not that great, right? Like these shoulders, they can't really go all the way up, right? There's a lot of cuts. It's very segmented. It's not very fluid. You cannot bend the neck or anything. So getting those like, deep kicks, they look kind of awkward. They don't look as good as if you do it on something like an SH Figuarts. And, that's a good flying kick pose. You can pretty much use that with any character that does any kind of martial arts, can jump or anything like that. And then just to kind of show it across the board here, kind of first one we'll show it on all of them. Do a flying kick on all the figures here. I would honestly, like, this Goku isn't the best example for SH Figuarts, but I felt like it's just better, like just good enough, or just, how'd you say, has more range than the Marvel Legends enough to get it on here as a slight upgrade, but it's definitely not the best, SH Figuarts to show kind of range of movement, but looks a little bit better. If you go ahead and take the head off and then move the joint this way, because they have those ball hinge joints right here. So just move it the other way. Pop that head back on, and then you can get a little bit more tilt that way, but it still doesn't look that great, but a little bit better, honestly. Doesn't look as weird. Like here, obviously, if you go ahead and you start looking inside the gap, it doesn't look that great. But here, you have a little bit more, it's a little bit more dynamic of a pose. There's a little bit more bend in all the joints, so it gives it a little bit more of a, kind of a little bit more of a like animated look, if you will. And then you have this one that's a little bit more static, and like I said, the head, you can't really move it or anything, so which is kind of unfortunate, but it is what it is. And then obviously had to show it. Take this hammer out of his hand. Something like a Yamaguchi and a Mafex is just gonna do it so easily, for one, and then also it's just gonna look so much better in every way because they have the neck joint, they have the way better, abdominal area. So something like a flying kick is just gonna look amazing. And then I will say that some of the joints on this figure are a little bit stiff, but yeah, like okay, so my camera ended up dying or it overheated because I was charging it and recording at the same time. So took a little break and now I'm back here. And instead of trying to get in that pose, which I was able to, but while I was recording, it overheated and it shut down. I'm gonna show kind of my favorite type style or scene as far as like photography goes, which is like one character against many, right? One of the main reasons why that's my favorite is just I think especially if you're trying to highlight a certain figure, especially in most cases where let me go ahead and zoom out here so you can see everything. In most cases, um you're probably trying to show off, one character in particular and sometimes you're trying to show off a couple characters, but I think this scene right here that I'm going to be setting up here while I'm talking um, is one that helps highlight, especially for like comic characters and really anything. The only one that's kind of hard to do is like Dragon Ball because that's not really a thing anymore, and like it's kind of weird. You can do it, right? Like it's an action figure, you can do it, but it doesn't look that great just because Dragon Ball has kind of shifted from that like they don't really fight any threats that are like, oh, it's more than one, you know what I mean? Like it's usually like, oh, this big bad guys. So but for the most part, like especially with something like Spider-Man where he's constantly getting into something, it's really easy and fun to make these kind of like 1v3s and what have you. So let's go ahead and get him kind of posed up. So let me go ahead and move this guy. Um, yeah, and like one of my biggest inspirations for making a video like this is kind of what's it called? Like I said, I said it earlier in the video, is like the Plastic Party um videos that D Amazing does. And then on top of that, like I just like sharing, stuff that is pertaining to the hobby. So let's go ahead and have him grabbing his neck. So he's hooked on there pretty well. So I can use him as a base, kind of a stand. Let's go ahead and balance that. That already looks cool just with that, you know what I mean? And then we can have one of these guys, like, let's see, trying to pose him off screen here. Have him trying to, like, kind of getting ready to hop in there. So let's have him right here. Let's go ahead and get it in there. But I'm sure you can angle it to a way to where, it's going to look really good depending on the angle that you have it at and, the way you snap your photo. So you have him right there. I'll kind of move it around here a little bit. You have him grabbing on that guy's neck. He just kicked the guy to his left over there. And then this guy in the middle is, about rushing Spider-Man, and he's about to get it too. So really cool shot. Something I love doing. That's probably my favorite thing to do is these kinds of photos where they're just, throwing hands and it's getting crazy. And then one of my other favorites is doing the like dude just got punched and he's flying, you know what I mean? Like that's something you can do, you know what I mean? Like he's kicking them, about to send him flying and stuff. So that's one of the better, shots that I like to do often. And then I'll get these guys out of the way. And then that's a little bit of a shot of a one-on-one. And then
which is always good.
But yeah, that's pretty much the way I do it. Like I said, for me personally, it's kind of hard to really encapture everything that I do and like my methods because I really don't have one. One of the best ways, like I said, I take inspiration from others' art, comic book panels, other types of art, movies, stuff like that. That's a big way that I get my inspiration. And that's really the best way I would say that you can figure it out. Obviously, you're only going to get better at posing and taking pictures and stuff if you do it. If you don't do it, then you really can't get better at it. But just really do what feels fun. Like, don't, I'm not making this video to say whether one way of doing it is better than the other. I'm just making the video to show off how I do it, that maybe you could watch this and get some inspiration and be like, oh, that, you know what? That seems like something I want to do. And then from there, you kind of make it your own, and then you go from there. And, you look at pictures, you look at movies, fight scenes, all that stuff. There's a certain way of going about it that I think would best fit you, as long as, like, it fits within what you're trying to do, if that makes sense. A little bit complicated, a little bit of a, hard video to pinpoint exactly how to do these things, but I want to make a series on it because I like talking about this stuff. I love talking about how I take pictures. I love posing figures on camera, off camera. I love the hobby, and I feel like videos like this will definitely be appreciated. And also, maybe this will come, maybe something will come out of this, and then, people just get better at taking photos or start taking photos, whatever have you. But anyways, that's pretty much it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you guys want more videos like this, make sure to drop a comment. I'd definitely be open to taking requests, anything you guys want to see. I'm planning on making videos of like effects, stands to use, different accessories and stuff like that. So there's more to come. So this isn't the last one, but I definitely take any requests or anything, any thoughts or anything like that are always appreciated. But as always, guys, if you could drop me a like, share, and subscribe, as it helps continue to grow the channel and helps me bring you guys more videos like this. Thank you so much, guys. Y'all have a good day. Peace.